Hello, welcome once again to our lecture number 6 of Introduction to Food Chemistry. And in this class, we are going to talk about the macronutrients. In the previous class, we looked at the micronutrients and we classified them into two major micronutrients, that is the vitamins and the minerals. We said we have the water-soluble and the fat-soluble vitamins, and for the minerals, we have the major or the macro minerals, and we have the micro or trace minerals. And now we are going to look at the macronutrients. In basic or elementary science, we note that we have three major macronutrients: the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the lipids. So macronutrients provide energy and structural components, as we have categorized them into carbohydrates, lipids, those for the fats and oils, and also proteins. Carbohydrates is one of the three major nutrients or the macronutrients. And the role of carbohydrates includes plant structure. It provides plants with their structure, that is cellulose. And it is also important in the formation of animal tissues, for example, connective tissues, and provides the shells of crustaceans. The nomenclature of carbohydrates. Carbohydrate nomenclature refers to the systematic way of naming carbohydrates basing on their chemical structure, the size, and the functional groups. And carbohydrates are mainly composed of three elements, that is carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, with a typical general formula of CH2O in brackets N. We can classify them according to their size, and here we have the monosaccharides, the disaccharides, and the polysaccharides. Monosaccharides are single sugar units, the simplest carbohydrates, for example, glucose and fructose. They are named based on the number of carbon atoms and the functional group. Carbohydrates contain a suffix or S, and they can exist in ring forms. We have the 6-membered ring that is called the pyran, and a 5-membered ring that is the furan. We can also have the open chain forms, which constitutes the aldose or the aldo group that contains an aldehyde group, for example, glucose. And we have also the keto or the ketone group, the ketose sugars, for example, fructose. Carbohydrates can also be classified according to the carbon count. Here we have the type of carbohydrates and the number of carbons. The triose has 3 carbon atoms, then the tetrose has 4, pentose 5, hexose 6, and heptose 7. Longer chains can also follow the same pattern. Bond orientation in carbohydrate structures. We have the horizontal bonds that exist facing out of the page or towards you. And then we have the vertical bonds that face into the page or away from you. And this is important for understanding the Fisher and Haworth projections. As we can see in these two diagrams, the Haworth projection of glucose. We have those hydroxide groups that face towards or inside, towards you or out of the page, and we have those vertical bonds that face into the page or away from you. We have the polyhydroxyl aldehydes or ketones and their derivatives. These are also very abundant in food components, and they can range from small sugars to large polymers. We have already talked about the monosaccharides. We also have the disaccharides, and these exist as 2 monosaccharides joined by a glycosidic bond. Examples, we have sucrose, that is a combination of glucose plus fructose. Then lactose contains glucose and galactose, and then maltose contains glucose and glucose, 2 glucose sugars. And we also have fibers. Fibers include cellulose, hemicellulose, pectins, and gums. Polysaccharides constitute long chains of monosaccharide units, and we can have two categories, that is, the homopolysaccharides that contain one type of monosaccharide, for example, starch, containing glucose units. Then we have the heteropolysaccharides that have multiple layers, for example, hyaluronic acid. The naming of these polysaccharides depends on the repeating units. For example, if we are having repeating units of glucose, it will be called glucans. If it is repeating units of galactose, it will be called galactans, and repeating units of mannose are called mannans. We have also the anomeric forms of carbohydrates. Here we find that monosaccharides can form ring structures, the cyclic forms, and exist in two anomeric forms. We have the alpha, that is the OH on the anomeric carbon is facing down in these sugars, and then we have the beta, the OH on the anomeric carbon is up. This is very important in naming the glycosidic bonds in disaccharides and polysaccharides. Let's look at the example of naming breakdown. Alpha-D-glucopyranose. It contains the alpha anomeric configuration. The D, that is the stereoisomer, mirror image of the L form, and then we have the gluco, derived from glucose, and then pyranose, that is the six-membered ring. That is why it is called alpha-D-glucopyranose. What are the functional roles of carbohydrates? Carbohydrates are a source of energy in the body, that is a nutritive value. We can also have functional uses. For example, in the food processing industry, carbohydrates can be used as sweeteners, as thickeners, stabilizers, and gelling agents. Simple sugars also enhance viscosity and improve the mouthfeel of these processed food products. Thank you.